Why am I standing in the back of this truck full of straw or hay, overlooking this hill with tall grass, overlooking this beautifully manicured yard here in city of Martinsville? I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead, and I received another notice to mow my grass. Now, the photograph that they provided me as evidence that they entered in their property maintenance database shows this nice manicured yard. That's because the majority of this yard is mowed if it has level ground. But anywhere it has steep slopes, the grass does grow tall. The reason the grass goes, except for near the house, the reason the grass grows tall is because this grass, due to soil biology and the different combinations of grass that are in there, grows 1 foot to 2 feet per week. And then when you had a rainy season like the major storms that we've had and the heat, it grows extremely fast. But the reason I'm standing on top of this straw or this hay is to show you how much volume of biomass that we've sequestered out of the atmosphere into a usable carbon. See, I see grass as a resource. There's one neighbor who is a little confused about grass, and even though they have very tall grass in their yard, their grass is ornamental where my grass is not, and they keep filing complaints with the city. Now, the city responds because it is their responsibility to respond, and it is quite possible that more than one person is putting out complaints. But as a city of Martinsville is a bee city and a bird sanctuary, they forget the beneficial pollinators that live in this grass, the ground nesting birds that are rare to this area, but also surviving in this area due to this grass, the habitat for young does and other animals in this area. Now, you might be saying, well, they could be concerned about snakes, rats, and other types of pests. And that's a legitimate concern. And that's why the hay is cut periodically. It's not allowed to grow until it falls over, except in the very back, where I worked with the Virginia Tech and Ohio State University to come up with a management plan post-forestry activity. So my argument is, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do to reduce erosion on these slopes and to stabilize the environment following a forestry activity. Yes, this hill previously had trees as tall as the trees across the street, and I was getting real tired of them falling on the house. So I, with the permission of my neighbors, had all the trees removed, shared with them the management plan, which included grass to be planted after the trees were removed. My neighbors also had trees removed, and then property in the back had trees removed as well, because any type of activity to remove a large number of trees, you need to make sure that you don't have any issues where wind could knock over the remaining trees, because many of these trees were very old. Rather than cutting those trees down and burning them, this was a no-burn site. Those trees went into the furniture manufacturing industry where they were intended to go. As I learned, the 40 acres behind this property was originally intended for the furniture factories such as Hooker Furniture and the other furniture factories around here, Bassett Furniture and such. So you see my yard. While my front porch is messy, I do have a trailer sitting in my driveway. The grass is regularly mowed and has been mowed that way the entire growing season. My growing season is much longer than other people's growing season because of the enzymes and other materials that I put into the lawn. This lawn, by the way, has no herbicides, no pesticides, no weed killer, no chemical applications. It is only done through the system that I well documented, which is called year-round green grass. Now, this type of grass is not as green in the winter because of the type of grass, but it is heat tolerant, it is well filled in, and it is a beautiful set of grass. The same techniques and methods that I learned from Virginia Tech, the Ohio State University, from different agricultural extensions, I've added over here. Now, is this an agricultural activity? No. In my community, there are at least 5 other properties that have slopes that are being stabilized by unkept vegetation. Okay, because I've been told that this is unkept vegetation. The difference is my unkept vegetation tends to be 80% grass, where in the other cases it's scrub brush and other things growing back, woody shrubs, stuff like that. I did not have that as a preference, even though that is a better habitat environment. In fact, one of the locations that manages grass exactly the same way I do, except they use mechanical equipment to mow, and it's a much larger area, is a museum. And it currently has a nature trail now. Now, I've taken reference pictures and will continue to do so because I'm being accused of keeping my yard untidy. And this time last year, I was in the newspaper with a possible grand jury investigation to declare my home a public nuisance. Does this look like a public nuisance? Yes, it's a little bit unkept. I need to pick up that barrel. The little shrubbery right there is a little big. There's a couple clusters of plants over there that was a failed wildflower bed, and I don't go and trim my trees regularly. But from that perspective, my yard is no different than the majority of the yards in the area. Now, this individual, I don't hold them at blame. Perhaps they don't know what an environmental or forestry activity is or looks like. And due to that, there's a concern that they may be frustrated, and because they don't understand what's going on, could be lashing out the only way they have possible. This hay is a valuable resource. I cut it and remove it from the property. Now, at one time, I had 8 cubic yards of compost in the yard in different gardens and areas. I had a 40-foot by 40-foot garden that was under progress. And I have set up other types of agriculture activities that you'll see on my podcast at www.prosperityhomestead.org. I'm going to turn my back here to let the neighbor get in with a little privacy here. But as you can see, the grass is mowed. It looks no different than anybody else's property. And when I do receive a notice, they don't provide the specific nuisance violation in which I am violating. But in full disclosure, I am giving you a panoramic view standing here on top of this stack of hay so that you can see for yourself what a nuisance property looks like. Now, here's the challenge. If you've had this problem with your city, town, or jurisdiction, I'd like to challenge you to share this video, but tag on it a picture of your property or a picture of the what is considered a nuisance. Because what I want to do is change the culture around environmentally friendly, low input landscaping. Now, I've had the assistance of natural landscapers to support this property. I've gotten feedback from regulated sources. There are no hazardous plants here. And very often I'll dig stuff up out of the yard and transplant it and take it someplace else. But sometimes it's full of flowers. Sometimes it's just green like this. And then sometimes it has tall grass. Now, the tall grass is not desirable. It is not easy to cut that grass and to mount it all up in here, especially when it's 80-some degrees outside. So I would like to cut it shorter and more often, but I don't like the noise of string trimmers. And I'm going to go ahead and keep my back to the neighbors here because I don't want them to think I'm filming them. So I only allow a mower on here because string trimmers drive me crazy. To hear the string trimmers and the mowers and the grinding noises of those 2-cylinder engines that put a lot of pollution into the atmosphere really bothers me. So I made a conscious effort to reduce the fuel usage on this particular property. The mower, when it's maintained and kept very sharp, is very efficient in doing the job. The kid that mows the grass can mow the grass in 45 minutes, including both yards. I do own the property on the other side. The property on the other side has the exact same landscaping as this property, and behind both properties is a giant clearing where I cleared out from the forestry trees that were falling on the house. And actually even had 2 trees fall on my neighbor's house, and I felt really, really bad about that because these trees should have been cut down a long time ago. Now, we've had COVID, we've had storms, we've had a lot of issues, and I can understand people's frustrations. But they need to educate themselves on what is a natural environment. So this environment in particular is designed after what Virginia Tech gave me in their book called Silvopasture. And it is a Virginia grassland. And there was plans to replant trees. We can't really show you the background because me jumping down off of this is probably not going to be safe with a camera in hand. But it was meant to be replanted with trees. As soon as I start having problems with the city, as soon as I start having problems with this particular neighbor, I decided to go ahead and stop the project. Why? Because I've got choices. I can pick up a piece of property in the county. I can work with a nonprofit. I can move, and I'm not stuck to one place. Now, if you're part of our intentional thrift programs or you're part of our other philosophies on living an environmentally and eco-friendly life, then you know that the design was meant for anybody to be able to maintain it. Now, again, like I said, when grass gets this tall, it's a little bit harder to cut. And since I'm not using a string trimmer, I use a scythe. It takes about the same amount of time, but a string trimmer would be more appealing to what neighbors' expectations are. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up, but here's the challenge. If you've had problems with your city, if you've had problems with a municipality, please take reference pictures as soon as they give you a nuisance notice. Post those pictures online. If you're concerned about privacy, share those pictures with when you share this video with your friends. I want to see how many people think this is a public nuisance property, including, full disclosure, the grass over there that's being cut down, of which a lot of it is under my feet. If you feel like this is a public nuisance, let me know and tell me why. There's a lot of concerns about fire hazards. There's concerns about rats and mice and other things. And I've shown you in video after video that long grass is actually more energy efficient. It cools the environment because it captures moisture from the atmosphere in the mornings, and then it insulates the ground from heat so that the ground doesn't battery the heat. It protects soil. It protects the environment. It provides habitat for small birds and insects. And if you believe this property here is unkept, point out the specific notices. And by the way, I'm in the city of Martinsville. If you believe I'm violating a public nuisance ordinance or any kind of ordinance, go ahead and look it up and tell me what it is. I know which ones I violate, which is none of them. And ultimately, I'm showing you with confidence the entire property from up top here where you can see everything. Okay, there's nothing hidden. In fact, I didn't wait till I cut the remaining grass. I'm showing you exactly how it is after the city of Martinsville visited me. Now, again, I'm not blaming the city of Martinsville. They're doing their job, and if there's enough complaints, then someone is going to have to come out here. And since they're not allowed to trespass on your property to verify the complaint, then it is difficult for them to know for sure if there is a violation. So again, the tip to you is to take reference pictures immediately after you receive the violation. And in this case, I'm doing full public disclosure because, again, I was in the newspaper last year with a potential grand jury investigation to declare my home a public nuisance. That would have caused me to lose my home or to be buried in fines as the areas were corrected. Now, if they can't tell me specifically what's wrong, and that's why I'm inviting you to investigate, then how am I going to fix it? And so there's a broken system with the complaint-based system, but also the misunderstanding of what is natural. Yes, some of these trees came up by themselves, and they're not ornamental trees. I understand that. There's actually a dead tree right there that I'll probably cut down as we move towards fall. There's cycles in which trees can be maintained or pruned, which I do follow those cycles. You can't prune trees in the summer. It doesn't work that way. But there's